So in this video, we're going to take a look at the deck section in Traktor Pro 2. So the deck section is feature packed with some really powerful features, and a lot goes on in the deck section. So the first decks we're going to look at are the track decks. These are the decks that you would normally associate with DJing, the same kind of decks you would see in Serato or Record Box DJ, where you load an MP3 or an audio file to each side and you mix those two files. So let's take it from the top all the way through the bottom. Right here is the deck header section. In this section, you can have up to 9 pieces of information visible associated with the song. A lot of these are tied into the ID3 tags. Some of them are a little bit more specialized for Traktor. In this instance, I have the song title up at the top, the artist right below it. These two I have turned off. I have beats to cue, which is a cool feature that helps you phrase your music. I have the BPM of the song that's playing, the pitch amount, so I can tell how much I am plus or minus in the pitch. I have the total time remaining in the song, and then the original BPM in the song. So like I said, if you go into the preferences and then go into the deck layout, track decks, right here in the deck header section, you can go ahead and turn these off, turn these on, and make these whatever pieces of information that you like. You can have up to 9, and you can pick from this entire long list. And what's cool too is that if you notice, this first row is a little bit more bolded and a little bit bigger than the other 2 rows. So that's cool. If you want information that's more important to you, you can put it in the top row and make it a little bit more visible as well. Next, we have the phase meter, which is basically like the Traktor Pro equivalent to Serato DJ's side-by-side waveforms to help you mix visually. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to play this first song right here, and then I'll bring in a second song on this side, and you'll see the phase meter in action. So the way you read the phase meter is if the meter's in the middle, that means the songs are beat matched. If it's to the right, then whichever song is to the right is pulling ahead. If it's to the left, that means the song is pulling behind. Okay, now let me show you how that phase meter works. Notice if the song's behind, it moves to the left, and if I pitch bend it, it's right in the middle. Again, it's drifting ahead. Now it's behind. Now it's on beat. So as you can see, just by glancing at the phase meter, I can tell what songs ahead or behind, and I can just either push it forward or pull it back a little bit. Really cool feature, really easy to use, and a great way to visually DJ using Traktor Pro 2. Next, we have the actual waveform. What's cool with the waveform is you can change the kind of waveform you have. So right now I have it in Spectrum, which is the waveform color that's kind of close to Traktor Pro, kind of close to Serato DJ, excuse me, where the reds and darker colors mean bass and blues and greens mean highs. You can also change that to ultraviolet, which is blue. This was introduced, I believe, with the Traktor Pro S4. Then you have the infrared, which is closer to the yellowish waveforms that we had in the original Traktor Pro, as well as X-ray, which is just gray if you like a more monotone color. I like the Spectrum. Gives you a little bit more information about the tracks. Lets you know when bass is coming in or when like a drop comes, or build up when it's just a little more hi-hats than it is, or more highs I should say, than bass. Just gives you a little bit more information. Below that, you have your play modes. So you have your absolute relative mode, your internal play button, and then you have flux mode, which is basically like the slip mode on CDJs. If I enable flex mode, and then I can jump back and forth, and I could also enable loops and stuff, just like slip mode on a CDJ, and it still keeps the time. So if you're familiar with slip mode on the CDJ, then that's the exact same thing as flex mode. Right here we have your selector for your auto loops, so all the way down to 1/32, all the way up to 32 beats. What I have to do is click on it and it activates. Just hit activate again and turn it off. Then moving down to this lower section, we have beat jump. If we click on move, so I can beat jump forward and backwards. Oh, let me turn off flex mode so I can beat jump forward and backwards, just like how it would do in Serato DJ. Now we have Q, which is how you set your cue points. So you have your 8 cue points, and then you can select which type of cue points you want. Traktor Pro actually has different kinds of cue points. You have your normal hot cue points, fade in and fade out, because Traktor Pro, you can actually use these markers to automatically fade in and fade out using the internal mixer. Load markers, which is kind of an extra thing to think about with Traktor Pro. In software like Serato DJ, you can only either start at the beginning of the track or start at the first cue point. With load markers, say I made this 4th or 5th cue point where I load in, it'll load there instead of loading at the first cue point, which is kind of a cool feature. I kind of see it as a hassle because if you don't set your load marker or load cue point, it'll just kind of load at the beginning of the song. Then you're gonna have to tap cue point 1 or wherever you'd normally like it to start. Next, we have the grid markers. This is if you have a grid as hot cue enabled, you actually have to save your grid as a hot cue. Right here, I have an example of my cue point 8 is the actual beat grid. You can actually turn this off in the preferences and save one of your hot cue spots and get it back and use it as another hot cue. And of course, you have your saved loops. So your saved loops can be saved in these parts as well. As you can see, I have loops right there. Also, you can actually have more cue points than the 8. Just like on a CDJ where you have memory points, you can have these as well. They're not necessarily hot cues where they're super easily accessible, but they're available. Also, you have your trash. So if you want to get rid of a cue point, just tap it and then hit the trash and then it goes away. And then you have your grid edit mode. So this right here, if you've edited a grid on any major DJ software, it's pretty much the same. You just find the part that you're looking for, hit the grid, say that's where you want the grid to start. Then you can adjust this BPM, either making the grid bigger or smaller, or moving the grid to the left or to the right. Then you can lock it in and make sure it's nice and tight and on beat. Once you learn how to beat grid, I mean, it's pretty simple to beat grid on any software. So this is the beat grid panel for Traktor Pro 2. Also, one thing about that is you can actually hide this section, save yourself some space using this button right here. And then there's actually different flavors, as they call them, of the decks. So you have your advanced, which is what I'm showing right here. You have micro, which is super small, sort of like the library view mode. You have small, which kind of makes it a little bit bigger. You get a little bit more functions. You're able to loop, pick your play modes. Then you get your essential, which actually makes the waveform the biggest view out of all of the different flavors. This essential actually has the biggest waveform, but you don't get the extra controls at the bottom. You get loops and some basic play controls. Then you have full, which is that first view we're kind of looking at, then advanced, which is the same as full view, but with this bottom section open. So that's the track deck pretty much overall. Oh, I forgot to mention, key lock is right here, this button right here. So if you're a DJ that uses key lock, myself included, just go ahead and click on this, then key lock's enabled. And then this button right here pulls the track all the way to the beginning of the song. So if you're scrubbing through the song like so, you can hit this button and jump right to the front, which is kind of nice. So the next deck we're going to look at is the remix deck. Now the remix deck is pretty much like a loop player or clip launcher, I should say, in Ableton Live. If you're familiar with the Ableton Live clip launch workflow, what you can do is you can load many different loops or one-shot samples and put them into these slots, and then you can play, in the case of Traktor Pro, you can play 4 at a time. So think of these as different banks of samples up and down, and then you can play this row at one time, or this row, or any combination of these 4 columns you can play. So you can play 4 different sources of music at once, all in one deck, which is pretty cool. And if you have the controllers that access the extra features to this, you can actually add effects to each one of these mini decks. You can filter each of them, you can pitch them up and down, etc. Super cool, super powerful, a little advanced, but if you're interested in that, it's there. And Traktor Pro comes with a bunch of loops that you can go ahead and play with as well. Next is the stem deck, which doesn't show up unless you have the Traktor D2 controller or one of the larger controllers. Stem decks actually break down an MP3 like this one right here into 4 separate tracks, and you can mix them individually. So for instance, you can go ahead and have a track broken down into bass line, drums, vocals, and synths, and then you can mix those parts and bring them in and bring them out, filter them in and out, affect each one of those individually, all at the same time in one single deck, which is super cool. It's something that I know that many DJs have been dreaming about, being able to DJ the different stems of a song all within one track. So Traktor Pro is the first to do it. Really cool feature. Just kind of sucks that you need the special controllers to unlock that feature. So that's a look at the deck section in Traktor Pro 2. So question today, which feature of the deck section do you think is most useful? Please go ahead and leave that down in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. And as always, if you found this video useful, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And thank you for watching PDot TV, where you find tips, tricks, and tutorials for DJs and music performers. See you next time.